You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Fishing the DMV. I'm your host, Thomas Ahrens.
Jared Mounts.
So we're finally doing a completely remote stream tonight. So hopefully this goes pretty well. We got a pretty cool guest that we're going to be gearing up in the queue here in a second. He's been running the Northern Virginia Kayak Association since 2017, and I'm really excited to have him on today to really talk about the world of kayak fishing because it's something I've been really wanting to get into more and more, and I'm just fascinated by it. Mike, are you there, man?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir.
Awesome. I was actually in the middle of trying to get a background on here so I can use my webcam. But we can go ahead and roll with this if you guys don't mind.
No problem at all. Again, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule just to be with us tonight.
No, absolutely, man. I appreciate you guys having me.
I've been extremely excited about the world of kayak fishing. I've been following you guys on Facebook, and I think it's awesome what you guys have been able to put together to really get people hooked in fishing. The one thing, I fished in college and I dabbled professionally, and it's as expensive as heck, but you still want to scratch that itch. And I really feel like kayaking is the up-and-coming beast that Bass and all these other organizations have to be aware of, and they are doing a great job about that. But the first thing for us to get started today, could just tell us a little bit about yourself for the people that are unaware of the kayak scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, first and foremost, I appreciate you guys having me on here. This is actually my first real podcast I've been on, so it's definitely an honor. So, but yeah, about myself, my name is Mike Ortega. I started up. Actually, I've been fishing my whole life. You know, like most of us, you get into it at a young age is really good. But you know, when I joined the military in when was that? 2009. You know, I kind of left that. You know, didn't do a whole lot of fishing, a whole lot of anything other than doing my job. You know, it's what we do. But I was born and raised in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, so I'm not actually a Virginia native. But I got to explore the world right when I joined the Army in 2009. So it kind of opened my eyes up, and you've got to do a lot more, fishing towards the end of my career. But that's kind of when I got into kayak fishing. As soon as I got back from Afghanistan in 2015, I needed something to do, right? Like I didn't have my family in town. I was just getting back. Actually ended up getting an elbow injury that wasn't combat related. That was kind of a dumb accident that I had overseas, but came back, and I needed something to do, right? I needed something to keep me occupied and keep my mind off of things and whatnot. So I picked up this little, I don't even know what brand it was, but it was like a little 8-foot sit on top, and no pun intended, it got me hooked. Like it was game over from there, right? But yeah, like I said, got into kayak fishing, got back, with a rod in my hand, late 2015. And then I met a guy by the name of Anthony Shingler, a great guy out in Clarksville, Tennessee. I was stationed at Fort Campbell when all this kind of went down. And Anthony was sort of more into the tournament scene, which at that time was still kind of up and coming, right? It's definitely not where it is today. And we'll get into that, here in a little bit. But Anthony started, fishing these tournaments, and he got me into it. And I was like, dude, I can't do it out of this little kayak I was in. We were talking big waters, right? Kentucky Lake, which is a crazy fishery, and to try to tackle that on a kayak is pretty tough in and of itself. But getting into a better kayak, I was able to do that. And started fishing some tournaments out there with Anthony. Just had a great time, The camaraderie of those clubs that I joined when I was out there in Tennessee was second to none. It was amazing, and that's sort of kind of what brought me. So when I ended up PCSing, or what we call the military permanent change of station, ended up getting moved to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, in 2016. Yeah, it was like late 2016, end of summer, early fall there. came to Virginia at Fort Belvoir, and I, thank God I met Anthony, met those folks out there, got, used to being in a kayak, actually ended up getting my first podium win out there. I got a third place in a tournament. It was actually a night tournament, which was crazy, like running headlamps, really, really dark. What lake was that? And it was Bluegrass Marina. I don't know if you guys heard of Chad Hoover.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Chad, it was actually like they called it his backyard. He used to live off this lake, and they had a tournament there with KBF Tennessee, KBF TN. And I got my first third place win out there. So that was a good time. But like I said, I know I'm kind of bouncing around a little bit. There's just so much, man, that got me into this sport and kind of drove me to fill a void out here in Northern Virginia, something that I had missed, when I moved out this way. Just didn't have that feel or, that type of being part of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just a club, whether it's an actual like recognized club or whatever, just a group of guys hanging out. We didn't have that here in the Northern Virginia area, and I missed it. And that's sort of what drove me to want to start NVKBA.
That's pretty cool, Mike. So you actually started that organization then?
I did, yeah. I started this. So this was, gosh, when was this? It was actually like the summer of 2017 is when I got the idea of it. Like I said, I moved here in 2016. Learned the Potomac River, which I'm still learning to this day. So you guys know how the Potomac River is. It's a monster, and it's a very dynamic fishery, to say the least.
Yeah.
But coming here, without a punching stick in hand, I had to learn a lot.
So, Mike, I want to say too, just thanks for your service as a veteran in the U.S. Army. I think that's
my pleasure, man. I appreciate that very much.
Can't thank you enough. I mean, obviously, the freedoms we have, are contributed to guys like you that are serving our country, and then just to have that foresight or idea to start that organization, Northern Virginia Kayak Bass Anglers. It's just from everything I've not fished with you guys, but a lot of your anglers come into the shop and nothing but great things to say about the organization as a whole. And I think it's a really great way as far as a kayak to get on these bodies of water, different bodies of water. You guys fish a lot of different bodies of water.
We do, and we definitely try to keep it diverse. We don't want to fish the same thing all the time, which in our area, as you guys know, definitely Jared, as you know, like there's not a lot of there's a lot of diversity when it comes to water types, but there's not a lot of areas that can host big organizations.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been one of our primary struggle is just to, back in the early days, I say early days, really 4 years ago now, 5 years ago almost. Our club was pretty small, it was a handful of guys, gals came out, and maybe anywhere between 10, 15 anglers at our first event. We only held one event in 2017, which was the quote unquote classic. And that's kind of why we dubbed it the classic from then on.
Okay.
Our final event of the season, like most organizations have a classic or a championship, but, it was really easy to get to a lot of these, to fish a lot of these different lakes and smaller bodies of water and rivers and whatnot. But man, as soon as this thing took off, it got a lot tougher. And I'm a firm, I really like to stand by, that quality experience. I don't want this thing to get watered down and to become something that, in my opinion, it lessens the quality when you try to do too much, right? We want to try to handle what we have and really hone in on what we're good at and make the club as best as possible and not, like I said, not water it down, for lack of better words. So we want to have good quality events, and we want to have as much participation as possible, and we want to run them events as as of the highest quality as we possibly can. And I think for that mentality, that's sort of what helped us be successful over the years.
With the start of the virus of unknown origins, did you see a growth in your club? Did you really feel like that was a thing that prevented people from coming in or an explosion in the outdoor industry? Because that's one thing I've been noticing is like ever since COVID hit, like the waters just seem a little bit more busier with things.
Man, I'll tell you, I 100% agree with you. I think it really did. I think it helped the club grow. We had a lot of participation last year. This year was huge. And I think coming out of 2020 and all the bad stuff that happened in 2020, folks really wanted to try something new. I think we've seen a lot of new anglers come in 2020, hitting the waters. Everything was packed. Boat ramps looked like freaking yard sales. Like, it was crazy. And we can touch on that too then after a bit. But like you said, man, it definitely, and I guess it's a good thing, right? People are outside, I'm not going to knock on somebody who doesn't, obviously we all started somewhere. If this is when they want to start, hell, I'm all about it. But we want to help those folks do things the right way. Folks that like us have been doing this for a little while, teach boat ramp etiquette. We're really big on that. And that's something, we can talk about then in a little bit, which I think the kayak community is getting better at it, but we want to try to, get that mentality out there as much as possible on a boat ramp etiquette, safety on the water is another big one. I couldn't tell you how many unsafe things I've seen last year at various boat ramps from new folks that are into it. And it's not necessarily their fault; they just don't know. But yeah, as far as the growth goes, our club, we hit 100 and almost 140 members.
Damn!
Wow.
Well done, sir. That's awesome.
That is great.
2021 was about 140. Our first event, the season opener on Lake Anna, was like early April last year. Hit 85.
Wow,
that's great.
Coming from our
10 boats.
humble beginnings, man, of 15 to 20 anglers, it was insane.
What was your average turnout last year?
Average turnout, I don't think we hit below 40.
That's really
strong.
good.
That's really strong.
Yeah, and like once you start kind of honing in on what you're good at as a club, drawing the attention of the anglers is very important, right? You want to keep it competitive, but you want to keep it fun, and that's sort of what we what we embody at NVKBA is we're here to cater to all folks who want to either get into the sport, but we want to keep it competitive enough for those guys that are seasoned anglers and veterans of the kayak community, and we want to make it competitive and fun for them as well.
So I wanted to ask that, Mike, two things, good segue into one of my questions. Number one, somebody that's interested in getting into competitive kayak fishing, kind of what are the must-haves? What must they have? And also there's a lot of people that don't really still fully understand a kayak tournament. I think we all know about, the bass boat, the 5, wave 5 fish limit type tournaments, and kayak tournament fishing is a lot different. Kind of talk to somebody wanting to get into it. What are the must-haves? And then also what does a typical tournament look like for you guys?
Yep, absolutely. So the beautiful thing about kayak fishing and competitive kayak fishing is that you don't need to come into this with a $10,000 setup, right? You can come into this, with a decent sit on top. You sit inside, whatever kind of kayak you're comfortable in, as long as it's a safe kayak. I'm a big fan, and I won't get into this because I'll tell you this conversation's been had a million times. But just like anything else, man, there's cheap stuff and there's good stuff. You get what you pay for in the community or, in the industry. So I'm a firm believer of buy the best kayak that you can afford that gets you on the water, period. If it's a $200 kayak from, a big box store, so be it. But use that kayak. Don't overdo it. If you're getting into something cheap, don't overdo it. Just get out there, learn the kayak, learn your abilities as a paddler. And go from there, and then upgrade as you're able to. So you don't need a whole lot. You can go out there with a cheap sit on top or sit inside, as long as you have the proper measuring device is big. And like you said, Jared, that's one of the big differences between boats and, traditional boat tournaments and then now kayak tournaments is we're not using live wells. We don't have live wells, right? We can't have them on a small watercraft like that. Just doesn't work. So we do catch, photo, release. And it's all done based off of measuring the fish on a bump board. And there's specific bump boards that are authorized for use under the KBF umbrella, the Kayak Bass Fishing umbrella, which is the national organization of which NVKBA is a partner club with, which helps us out in other ways too, as far as like running tournaments with insurance and things like that. So KBF has been amazing. I would be remiss if I didn't mention KBF and Chad Hoover and all the folks up there that really make it possible for us smaller grassroots type clubs to do this stuff. So big shout out to them. But so you don't need a whole lot. Like I said, you need a good bump board, one that's authorized. You can't just go buy a Berkeley stick from Walmart and expect to hop into a kayak tournament. You'll get DQ'd right away. And then of course your life vest, your PFD, you have to have that. You have to have all the Coast Guard required items on that, like your whistle. But that's really about it, and a good phone, right? Like you got to have a good device that takes good quality pictures. I couldn't tell you how many times I've seen, and it's not so much an issue now because phones are pretty, high tech nowadays. But back in the early days, man, there was a lot of blurry photos, folks using actual cameras with SD cards. Back in the day, we didn't have a tournament management system to upload these pictures to, so you had to go up to the judge at the end of the event. You stood in line and you showed him your pictures, and then he wrote it down on a piece of paper.
Wow.
So, but yeah, and that's it. I mean, you need a good measuring board, you need a good phone, good quality phone, something preferably have your waterproof case in it or on it, whatever, dry bag, whatever you can. Obviously you don't want to lose that, because if you lose your phone, you're pretty much out of luck unless you have a buddy who can let you use their phone and log into your tournament management account. So that is allowed. It's authorized, because people do lose devices out there. But yeah, I know I'm going at this pretty fast, and it's a lot of stuff. But
no, it's good information.
No, yeah, and what we might have to do, because I know there's a huge need for this information, we might have to have you back on it.
Absolutely, man. I'm all about it.
Because like the biggest thing, I also like your kayak setup, because I know there's so many different ways, and you hit the nail on your head about the difference between cheap and like what you pay for is what you get. Because my first kayak when I grew up was a Walmart special, and I hated that thing. I'm 6'1", about around 230, and I felt terrible in that. And then finally I was like, you know what, I'm gonna purchase a little bit better kayak. I think it was a Wilderness. It was the Radar 135 was my first like better quality. Yep. I was like, holy crap, I actually like kayak.
That's a solid boat, man.
And it's
I'm so in a wheelie right now.
And it's a huge difference. It's a huge difference. And so
it is, and it just makes your whole experience that much better, right? Like you're not going to be into something if you don't like doing it.
Exactly. But yeah, so I definitely want to go down the rabbit hole with you with that. But then what would you consider, what is some safety protocols that you think are important? Because I see you guys on the Potomac River, and I fish tournaments there out of a boat, and sometimes I think it's a little hairy to be out there. Yeah. So when you're dealing with rough water, big water, and even cold water, right now, it's January, and I've seen people out there in kayaks. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Yep. So especially with the cold water thing, I don't encourage anybody to get out in the wintertime unless you have a dry suit. Now, there's a lot of guys out there that will do it that, are pretty confident in their abilities to handle their kayak or, whatever the equipment they're running, that are pretty good at it, but at the same time, it's just one of those things. You never know what's going to happen, just like anything else in life. You don't know what's going to happen, and it's one of those. Another reason why we don't run tournaments all year long, I know there's a lot of guys that are out there that wish we would run like a winter series. It just, to me, it's not worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? When you're trying to do that stuff on a kayak, there's just too many factors, too many things that can go wrong. And if you're not, and dry suits aren't cheap, we're talking, $400 or $500 for a basic dry suit, and the price just goes up from there.
At what temperature would you consider it safe for your beginner angler to actually get out on the water? When should they start looking?
So I know there's folks out there that will argue with me on this one, which is fine, because it's not 100% accurate, but it's a good rule of thumb, right? Is the 120 degree rule of thumb. So if you're fishing and your air temperature plus your water temperature equals 120 degrees, you're a little more on the safe side. Like if you were to, God forbid, capsize, I think that 120 degree, like a 60 degree water temp and 60 degree air temp, I don't think you're going to really get hypothermia from that. Now, things can happen, if you lessen that, depending on where you are in the threshold from 120. That's kind of the rule of thumb we go off of. Now, like I said, there's some new data out there on what can happen at certain temperatures. I'm not privy to all of that at the moment, but once the fall bite is done, when that water temperature starts getting under, 50, 55 to 50, probably even less than that, maybe, 45, between 45 and 50, I don't recommend folks going out there, especially when the air temperature is what it's been lately. It's just kind of a recipe for disaster. Again, if you have a dry suit and you're comfortable in that dry suit, power to you, because there's a lot of great fishing to be had this time of year. There's no doubt about it. But that's, especially for beginners, I recommend that, if your water temp and your air temp aren't hitting that 120 degree number, then it's probably best to hang out on the bank or do your research and prep for the tournament season.
Good deal. That's a really good deal.
Jared, I know you've got some good videos out there too, Mike. I was watching one earlier on safety.
Yeah,
do a good job of getting educational information out there.
Yeah, definitely. And if there's new data out there and stuff that I'm not aware of, I encourage folks to share it. I just don't want, especially in like our Facebook group, I don't like when folks share disinformation or misinformation. I try to keep that to a minimum as best as possible. But yeah, we run a seminar. We've been doing a seminar almost every year now. Last year with COVID and 2020, we ended up doing a virtual one, which was just me and my Jim helps me run the club. We were out there on Lake Mooney talking about some different things and kind of run through a scenario of when you catch a fish, what do you do? So and folks find that really helpful. And I don't know if we're going to run one for this year yet. I just got schedule's been nuts lately, my personal schedule, and then obviously everything going on we get a lot of dates kind of moving around right now for some of the events. So even the schedule that we have right now isn't quite solid yet. So I just need to iron out a couple of things with that. But I always encourage folks to check out those seminar videos. It's one of the things that will definitely help a new angler. Like I said, recommend my biggest thing with new guys, and even guys have been doing it for a while. Rules change from now, now and then. Rules will change, and there's addendums to the rule book. So I just really encourage folks to get familiar with those rules and read that. Read it, and really know it and understand it, because we don't have time as judges to explain to everybody what they got wrong and why things are scored the way they are, and it behooves the anglers to know that stuff up front. It just helps the process, helps.
So are you guys, one of the rules I just had a question about, Are you guys doing the 5 longest fish, or is it unlimited number and still going total inches?
So for a traditional one-day event, we are running, we've been doing 5 longest fish. So your best 5, we set a 12-inch minimum for our club. Back in the old days, we would run an 8-inch minimum, because the old measuring device we used to use was called the hog trough, and it was a plastic bump board. And the first mark on that board was 8 inches. So anything less than that, obviously, we couldn't really score. So we just said, as long as it passed the 8-inch mark, it counted. Well, when you start growing in size and you have a field of 85 catching, hundreds of 8-inch fish or 12-inch, even 11 to 10, 11-inch fish, that, a lot of times, that could mean the difference between a first and second place win. But if we cut the minimum at 12, it sort of weeds out all the dinks, and really helps us with those bigger events to save time in the judging process. So that way we can get all the stats, all the results done in a timely manner,
That's
another
awesome.
Another thing I thought was very interesting about you guys is where your tournament structure. Sometimes you're on a given body of water, like you said, Lake Anna, but I found there's times too where you guys can fish. Say, take the Shenandoah River. Guys have the opportunity to fish any part of the Shenandoah River,
Yep.
and it kind of spreads everybody out, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, and that
the listeners, how do you regulate that? What is the process you use? Because you're putting in and taking out at different places.
Yeah, because I'm interested in that. So it's like, is it once you put in, you have to stay in? Are you allowed to come back out in a tournament day? Like, how does that all work? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the beautiful thing about kayaks, right, is you can kind of pick up and go depending on what your setup is. There's a lot of guys out there that pretty much have glorified, little miniature John boats with bow mounted trolling motors, a lot of gear, or you can run light and run a couple rods and a light sit on top kayak and drag it through the woods. So what we do is when we set those sort of open water, quote unquote open water events for the rivers, right? Like we talked about earlier, there's not a whole lot of areas in the Northern Virginia area that have the capacity to be able to hold such an organization, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we got to spread it out. We got to use the tournament management system and the virtual scoring to our advantage. So real quick, before I tap into that, I do want to hit on the fact that, yes, we are the type of club that wants to have as many in-person meetups as possible. But sometimes it's just not doable, right? Just because of the way that, floating a river is. You're putting in somewhere and taking out somewhere else. People are really dispersed across the Nova area, so it just makes it too hard sometimes. So for those events, we sort of keep those more virtual, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than something like Lake Anna, where we can go, everybody can meet up at Tim's on Lake Anna at the end of the event in a huge parking lot, huge grass field. That stuff's awesome. That's what I love that about our community and about the way we run our trail. And a lot of other small, even the big girls do that. You're meeting up in person. It's just, you get to hang out with your buds afterwards. It's a great time. Mm-hmm. But yeah, getting back to the kind of the disbursement of these especially the river tournaments. And we have a couple lake tournaments as well, because we want to hit these bodies of water that are great fisheries, but it just doesn't make sense to have an in-person meetup. So what we do is we pick a boundary. I get on Google Maps and I find I check in. I'll even go to the ramps a lot of times and make sure that it's doable. But I'll pick a bridge, on the Shenandoah River, whether it's a North Fork cutoff or South Fork cutoff. I'll make a boundary line from there that pretty much gives somebody the option to fish the entire Northern Virginia stretch of the Shenandoah River. And they can fish any public launch that's available on that stretch.
Okay.
So, and then again, with the Upper Potomac, there's a lot of sketchy areas in the Upper Potomac where I really don't want anglers going, like obviously Great Falls, right? We don't want to have anybody rolling down Great Falls. And I don't even know if it's possible, to be honest. I've never floated above that area. So, we make those boundary lines. We cut it off at a safe spot so that if you catch a fish or you try to submit a fish that was geotagged from that area, it's not going to count.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the other great things about the catch photo releases. The technology behind all this is insane. We work with Fishing Chaos is the app that we use, and those guys are phenomenal at what they do. The metadata from all your pictures, that's the other thing. You got to have GPS on when you're running, this app in your phone, so that number one, it tells us where your fish is. It tells us where you were fishing. God forbid something were to happen, we know where to start looking.
Right.
So that's another safety feature in there. We have to have anglers, checking in and checking out on the app. So that's one of the ways we kind of get around that, and we're able to fish these dispersed, kind of remote bodies of water and allow anglers that flexibility. We want everybody's got their honey holes on the rivers, and we want you to be able to fish those, but it's going to be, obviously within the boundaries that we set. And if those boundaries ever need to be updated or fine tuned, we're all about it. We encourage anglers to come to us with feedback, because that's how we get better. I don't know everything. I'll be the first to admit, I'm a tournament director, but there's a lot of learning to do,
How I mean, that's awesome because there's so much more strategy I think involved that is for a guy like me that's really cool when you can take your kayak out, move it around depending on where you're at.
Yep.
With using the app though, how much does cell service come into play when you guys pick a place to have an event? I mean, I'm
So
assuming
it does, and that's
Okay.
been it definitely comes into play, right? Like it's one of those things that we kind of tell folks: if you don't have service at an area, it's okay. You can catch a fish, you can log the fish, you can save it in your digital live well. That's a feature on that app. If you finish the day and you still don't have upload ability at the end of the tournament, we give everybody an hour grace period
Okay.
after the tournament. So that's, you have, X amount of minutes to get your kayak into your truck or on your trailer, drive to somewhere that has service and upload your fish. That's kind of how we've been doing it. It's not a perfect system by any means, but trying to accommodate the angler and give them as much time as possible. That way they can fish up to the last minute. So
Now, you guys also have like a marker that's given to them the day of that they have to include in that photograph as well to
Yep.
kind of let you know that fish wasn't caught.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because that's actually one of the other requirements. You, in addition to your measuring device and your phone, right? You got to have an identifier card. So what that does is it's a card. It's literally like the size of a baseball card that has a bunch of different boxes on it. The ones from KBF, those are the ones that we use. They have a bunch of different boxes on, so you can fish multiple tournaments at one time, especially if you're in like a statewide month-long tournament.
Interesting.
You can double dip, triple dip, quadruple dip on whatever tournament you're in. If you are fishing eligible waters for that event, that's what you can do.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, you get a code the day of the tournament. It'll come to you via email. If you don't have cell phone service for whatever reason and you missed the code, that you got to get service. That's just part of the game.
Yeah.
You got to call me or get to somewhere where you can check your email, because that email now is automated and it'll come out and it'll hit your inbox to get that code. So yeah, it's really one of those things. What's more important, you going out there fishing without the right code and not being able to log anything, or using a half an hour to get to somewhere that has service so you can still fish.
Yeah, that's such a great format though, because I mean, bottom line, you're getting guys on the water. I mean, you're getting, like you say, from 40 to 80 guys per tournament, guys and gals on the water. I mean, that to me, that's what it's all about. I mean, getting them
And
on
of
the
course,
water.
that's another thing, is trying to pick the best times to fish those bodies of water during the year, right? Like, I'm not going to send somebody into Lake Anna in the middle of July or August with a bunch of jet skis running around. Like, it's dumb, I'm going to try to get somebody on Lake Anna as early as I can. Right now, so it was a little different this year. We actually, and KBF ended up moving an event, which was the Tidal Potomac. So we're running a joint event with KBF, the national organization. They're coming to town. They got Stafford County Tourism on board for the last couple of years with this event. It's a high payout event. So we join up with them and we run our club at the same time, right? But they ended up moving that one to early April, which I had lined up for Lake Anna, like we did last year with the season opener. It was a big success. But since KBF moved theirs up early, I ended up turning that into the season opener for us. So it's going to be a massive event.
I don't know if you see it yet. I'm sharing. I'm
Do you have
sharing
the schedule up?
Yeah, I got it up right now. 'Cause
Fantastic.
I wanted to go through that there with you.
Yeah, so I was not a big fan of putting Lake Anna into May, but I don't see it happening later unless we potentially move it into even September. I don't want to do, because that's Labor Day weekend, and that's another thing, trying to hit these trying to provide anglers with as much flexibility as possible. I check out other local, we have another club down in kind of central and southern Virginia that runs down there. VKT, you can see them up on our schedule. We're running the season opener alongside them. They're coming up here to fish. But they have their schedule out as well, and I don't want to overlap on them. We don't, we want to provide anglers that want to travel to be able to fish all of it as best as possible. No trail is going to have a perfect schedule to, they're going to miss an event here and there, but we try to do our best with that.
And for our audio listeners at home, what I have shared right now is the tentative 2022 schedule right now, where April 9th through the 10th, they're going to be starting out on the Tidal Potomac River. May 14th, they're at Lake Anna. 18th of June is going to be stop number 3, which is the Shenandoah Upper Potomac Rappahannock. July 23rd is stop 4, which is the Battle of Five Lakes, which is, Jared, can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Then you help me,
Well,
because I only have like
put my
first grade
eyeballs
spelling.
on.
So most of those are our lakes around Stafford, Fredericksburg, Spotsy. There's a lot of hell of a good bodies of water down here,
And-
closer to where I'm at, they don't really have like I said before, they don't really have the parking lot space to hold an in-person event, let alone even the sizes of the bodies of water. I don't think will handle 85 anglers.
But honestly, this is the one thing that's so attractive too, is you can go to these places that can be sometimes absolute dynamite.
Yes.
And that brings up two things. Like I off the top of my head, one is what is your guys' range? Because there are so many cool little lakes that might be trolling motor only that you could absolutely whack them on if you have a couple lakes to choose from. And then number 2 is what goes into creating the schedule.
So I'm going to try to answer the first question. So the lakes one was kind of, so especially when you look at Nye and Mooney, right?
Mhm.
Those lakes are pretty good sized lakes, and they're managed well. But I think really I didn't want to not fish those, right? Because we don't have a whole lot of other lakes in the area. And I think one of the biggest reasons why these are the 5 that we focus on is because a lot of the other lakes in the area are owned by DWR, and they don't allow tournaments, right? Now, that's actually, don't quote me on this, but I think that's going to be changing soon. I know Chad Hoover's been working with the game wardens, everybody at DWR, on potentially allowing these kayak tournaments, because
That would be a game changer.
so the weird thing is that it's a play of words, right? So you can't call it a tournament; you have to call it a challenge. So if you call it a challenge, right, it kind of opens that up, and everybody knows it's catch, photo, release. So you're not bagging fish, you're not throwing them live well.
Politics, I swear to God.
It is, and that's really what it boils down to, unfortunately. But
that's good for you though, because if that happens, that would make
helps
your
us
job a lot
out.
easier.
But at the same time, it doesn't help us when it comes to the trail stops. Now, again, a lot of those lakes around the area, I look at a place like Burke Lake, right, up in Fairfax, even a place like Frederick. I think Frederick would be another good one. I think, but I'll be honest, I don't know, Jared, is Frederick DWR owned, or is
It is, yes.
It is. I thought
It is owned, yeah.
Yep. So
Beaver
that's
Dam too.
another one. Now, when they say they're going to allow the quote unquote challenge series to be held on these lakes, that opens us up for our challenge series. What I have on the schedule right now, 1 to 31 October, the monthly challenge, right? And then especially the 1 to 22 November, that's our 22 red, white, and blue charity event for veterans. Those can absolutely be used on those lakes, according to the news that I've heard as of late. Now, I got to put that out, obviously, officially. I need to hear that from official channels before I go ahead and give anglers the green light on that. But that's sort of what I think is coming down the pipeline. Again, a tournament, trail stop, I don't see it happening anytime soon unless they actually say, yes, you can hold a quote-unquote tournament. And I can legally do that and add one of those, maybe we do like a Fairfax or Nova, like actual like Northern Virginia thing where we bring in Frederick. What's the other one up there? Starts with an S.
Could you bring in Sleater's Lake and Beaver Dam?
Sleater's, that's the one I was thinking too, yeah. Now I think those are not DWR owned, but I think it was just the size of it to hold a single event on there. What didn't make sense when we looked at it.
Yeah, I think it just to do one body of water like that, it probably wouldn't. It'd be way too small.
But that could be a thing, definitely, if we can run a tournament and call it a tournament. And the reason we call it a tournament is because, it's part of our AOY series, our Angler of the Year, Rookie of the Year series. We want these to be, sort of prestigious events. All the ones you see in orange here on the schedule, other than the last one, the ones that have the star next to a little orange star, those are all of your, like, no crap, this is, I'm going, hard. And these are the events that I want to fish this year to make it to be Angler of the Year, qualify for the national championship. All those all those Orange Star events are national championship qualifiers. So I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure if they announced it yet, but this past October they held the national championship in Bossier City, Louisiana.
Wow.
That's awesome.
You got a ton of kayakers out on the Red River, Cypress Bayou. What's the other big one? Caddo. Yeah, a lot of amazing lakes and fisheries down there. A lot of alligators that our northern guys weren't used to. But it's pretty crazy looking underneath your kayak and seeing a gator.
Wow.
on your depth finder.
That is crazy. What another great opportunity, though. I mean, be able to you're fishing locally, but then have the opportunity to qualify. Like you were saying, double, triple dip, and then also still qualify for push on other bodies of water. That it's such a great thing. This kayak.
It's really cool, man, and it definitely gives the guys who might not be able to either afford a bass boat or they just don't have the means to get into something like that. Kind of that opportunity, it's a different stage. But I've heard of a lot of guys moving over from bass boats to kayaks for whatever reason. It just seems like it's something that's really taken off over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know Ike and Ellie made a move. And,
he did, yeah. I don't know. Is he still fishing big bass tournaments? I know he's fishing. I think he's still fishing the big stuff, but he definitely makes an appearance to some of these sort of the national level, like your Hobie BOS, your BASS, and then of course KBF. I know Susquehanna River was a big one. But yeah, it's really cool seeing some of these pros come down and check it out.
Bringing up the Susquehanna, like what would be too far out of your range for quote unquote Northern Virginia? I mean, would Smith Mountain Lake, the Susquehanna, Deep Creek, the Upper Bay, like are these places like a possibility in the future, or is that like that's a little too far? Yeah,
so those we end up so we don't want to step on other clubs' toes at the same time. So there are other clubs in around. We got Mid-Atlantic Kayak Bass Fishing. Those guys run Upper Bay. They run Susquehanna.
Gotcha.
And a lot of that Maryland kind of Delmarva type fisheries, and they'll even come over here every now and then. Sometimes we'll run a joint event with them as well. They're pretty good guys over there. We enjoy doing stuff with them. And then of course you have VKT down south. I think there's another club called Bass Cast that runs a lot of Smith Mountain Lake stuff. So we just kind of stay up here and we kind of try to hold true to our name. Northern Virginia Kayak Bass Anglers. We kind of cut down from Lake Anna on up is where we focus on.
Okay.
And then we'll draw a boundary map. If we're doing a month-long challenge, it'll be any water that's not DWR owned. Well, hopefully here in the future those will be eligible as well. So it'll be anything within the boundaries. And we include, Upper Potomac all the way up to, West Virginia, Harpers Ferry area. We'll even let folks, tap into West Virginia up there as well on the Upper Shenandoah. So as long as you're on either side of those, from those rivers on in, you're good to go.
That really brings up another, like we always talk about when you're fishing, like even you talk about Lake Anna or any body of water, like where you're going to fish, and then to throw in, you could fish different river systems.
Yeah.
Like you have to make a decision, and hopefully that decision pays off.
Exactly. And that's sort of the fun part of it.
Yeah.
We just don't know what's going to happen. I'll tell you what, the first classic we had was 2017, and it was an open tournament. A couple of guys and myself, we drove over to Germantown Lake, right down here close to, I think it's Fauquier County. It's not too far from where I live in Stafford, but went over there and we saw like 3 or 4 other guys from the club fishing that lake because it's a great little honey hole. I'm not gonna lie, it's a good little spot to fish, especially early March time frame. But guys didn't understand. I have all this area to fish. Why would I just put all my eggs in one basket? And it was a 2-day event. So the next day, one of my buddies was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going up north. I'm going to what's that hot water discharge up
Blue Plains?
Blue Plains is one. And then on the Virginia side, you got like 4 Mile Run, all those.
Yeah.
Dude went up in that area and fished and won the tournament. So it's crazy to see, where folks end up, you'd be surprised. A lot of guys, and it's all legal water.
Have you found any has there been any patterns where like one is predominantly winning over the other, maybe like a river system?
You know what? It's been tough over the last couple of years. A lot of guys will migrate to the Shenandoah, and we actually had to call off the two other rivers. Actually, I don't think it was this past year. It was the year before. We had to call off the Rappahannock and the Upper Potomac because they were just too dangerous. We had a lot of rain that week prior, and the levels were too high.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we haven't really had a good gauge on what's best certain times of year, but the Shenandoah is just such a bigger, much bigger fishery and much more water available to fish than something like, the Upper Rappahannock, to where you're kind of limited to city docks on over, towards the Rapidan. Now I've heard that DWR was opening up a couple more boat ramps, so I'm really looking forward to seeing the Rappahannock kind of come into the picture a little more. And of course, you got guys that have their spots on the Upper Potomac. So I think this year, as long as everything pans out weather-wise, we should get a pretty good idea of what fish is better that time of year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that one
That's another event too. That's one of the events that the only event that we have smallmouth only. So any other event, if you catch a smallie, you're good. But that is one tournament that and it's just, trust me, a lot of guys don't like it because everybody has their largemouth holes on the Shenandoah. I'm not going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they're there. Everybody knows it. And those, are going to be 9 times out of 10 you're winning fish in a tournament. But when you cut that ability off and make it, I don't want to say even playing field, but you kind of cut that ability off and kind of set the stage for all anglers, it really truly does make it a challenge, right? Mm-hmm. And to have everybody, I think it adds to the fun. It adds to that, you got to really put your work in, do your homework, learn how to catch smallmouth bass. They're a lot different.
Oh yeah,
everyone knows it. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just one of those other things that kind of sets our club apart, as we sort of force you to get out of your comfort zone and make you a better angler, right? Because you're going to be representing our club on the world stage or on the national level when it comes to these national championships and stuff. So we figure if you can catch them both, you do pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
What are the rules and regulations with kayaks? So example is, if I'm fishing the tidal Potomac, I would definitely like maybe the 14-foot, Hobie Pro. But then if I'm fishing the Shenandoah, I don't know if I want that oil rig on there.
Yeah.
I want something a little bit lighter. Are you allowed to flip flop in between, or is it like the pros? The boat you start the year with is the boat you have to fish with.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, we let you fish in whatever, as long as it is recognized, as long as it identifies as a kayak, right? It's fair game. So a lot of guys, especially nowadays, a lot of guys will have 2, sometimes 3 different kayaks.
Wow.
You're rocking.
What are your top kayaks on the water, you think, right now?
Oh boy.
Oh man, that's a loaded. Oh man. So, man, you're seeing a lot of. I'll tell you what, you're seeing a lot of bow-mounted trolling motors lately. It doesn't really matter. Kayak is kind of indifferent. As long as the kayak has the weight capacity to handle it and is stable enough to stand up on, you've seen a lot of guys go and work these GPS enabled, like your XI3s is a big popular one right now. But it's probably more propulsion focused than it is actual kayak. Kayak is sort of nowadays there's so many options.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's not like the old days where you had, a handful of kayaks and you were doing a lot of DIY rigging to get what you want out of that boat. Nowadays, everything, you can, the possibilities are almost endless. So like, it's really what you're most comfortable in. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things we stress out to people is this demo. If you can get on the water, meet up with somebody in the club. We have every kayak you can think of in our club. So put a word out and, go fish with a buddy and try their boat out kind of thing. But we see a lot of Hobies. Hobies is a big popular one. Old Town's another big popular one. A lot of your pedal drives are getting real popular now. And of course, like I said, your bow mount trolling motors, New Canoe is a big one. They're kind of made for that bow mount experience. It's kind of like fishing off a John boat almost. But yeah, I'd say those are probably your 3 big ones. Bonafide's another really popular boat. It's one of those boats that's really skinny, but it's really stable, so it's fast. Faster than trying to paddle around a New Canoe Frontier that's almost 40 inches wide. And that's another thing that comes into play. You got to really learn your boat, learn your equipment. Longer paddle for wider kayaks is going to get you, moving better. It's going to be a lot easier to paddle. Seat height, it's crazy, man. Like just the amount of options there are.
And I like what you said too. I mean, your members would be a great resource if somebody's thinking about that to quiz them and find out what they like or don't like about the different
Most
models.
definitely. And we always tell folks like, hey, that's what the group is there for. Use that search button. I guarantee you it's already been asked,
Right.
at some point. If you can't find it, ask a question. I couldn't tell you, like, we have such a great group of guys and gals that are super helpful. We keep it, down to earth. We're not here to shame anybody. That's not what it's about. If anybody's caught, trolling or shaming somebody, they're out. We don't play games like that in our group. And it happens a lot in a lot of these, these groups and public forums and things. Y'all know how the internet is. But that's one thing we just kind of keep at a zero tolerance in our club. And our club is our group is our club. It's kind of how we get our word out. We have a website. We have, we're dabbling into YouTube and stuff now, trying to get some of our captains meetings out there. But our group is kind of our home. That's where we're at, So we want to protect that house. We're proud of it. We're not here to bash people. We're not here to, just harbor any negativity. We're all about positivity, and that's kind of the way we've been keeping it, and it's been working out pretty good.
Mike, you've done an incredible job
Yeah.
building this thing up. It's amazing. And as this thing grows, the political headaches also grow with it. How do you balance doing this and dealing with sometimes, the bullshit that comes with, being the guy, but then also fishing and getting out there and doing it?
It's tough, man, but it's one of those things I'm just, I feel like it was my calling, it's something I felt was a need in our area. You're always going to have somebody that disagrees with you. But, you kind of learn as you go as a tournament director what really matters, right? Like, you're not going to make everybody happy. That's the way the world is. You can't. It's pretty much impossible. But if you do your best to try to hear those people out and take something from it, whether it be positive or negative, and learn from it, add it into your book of lessons learned, right? That's what I call it, my invisible book of lessons learned. And I've got guys that come to me every season. Hey, Mike, we even sometimes we'll do a survey, and get all that feedback from the club and try to build upon it based off of what the anglers want. Because this club isn't about me, it's about the anglers. So it's sort of the way, just the mentality behind it. And it works out. Like I said, we're not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect, but if there's a mistake, and if we make a mistake, we own up to it. I'm the first to admit to it, and we fix it. And if we can't fix it, we just do better next time. It's fishing, guys. Like this, we're here to have fun. At the end of the day, yeah, it's about, there's money involved. There's pride involved in it, but at the end of the day, we're that grassroots organization that welcomes us. Whoever wants to come do this, we try to give them that platform to do it, and do it, in a fun way.
So one thing I saw on your website, you said that it was formed with three things in mind: competition, community, and camaraderie. And I really like that concept. And
Yep.
you've been obviously talking to that a lot. You can just tell that really shows through with your leadership and just the group as a whole. Talk maybe a little bit about you appear to be doing a good bit of community service projects, kind of giving back to the community. What are some of those things that you all have done as an organization?
Yeah, sure. So one of the big ones has been, our kind of our involvement with the veteran community. That's been one of always obviously near and dear to my heart. I'm a veteran myself. I ended up getting out 2018 and stayed in the area because I like it around here. I work for the government, like a lot of people around here. But that military is always near and dear to my heart, So to be able to give back in that way, to be able to use the club in a positive way. Our club is just comprised of so many veterans and military and law enforcement, first responder personnel in our area to begin with. I think, a lot of those guys guys and gals sort of gravitate to the outdoors, right? Like, it's peaceful, it's almost therapeutic in a lot of ways, So to be able to give back to that community is amazing. We just donated 50% of our entry fees to Mission 22 in November of last year, which they are all about the mission, the 22 a day. The veterans take their lives due to PTSD and things like that. So what they do is they provide assistance and help to veterans who are struggling, and then obviously families of those who have lost loved ones due to that kind of stuff. So to be able to give back to that community felt amazing. We've done it for Heroes on the Water, which takes active duty service members, veterans, retirees, law enforcement out on the water and gets them in kayaks fishing. That's another great organization. Bravo Zulu Outdoors, which I don't think they're doing much right now. I'm not sure the status on them, but they were another one that we were pretty good partners with here in the Northern Virginia area that kind of did the same thing, getting folks outdoors that need that therapy. So that's one of the big things we do as far as community service. Also working with DWR, I don't think they did it this year or last year. It was their youth day, Youth Sportsman's Day here in Stafford County. They go out to Curtis Lake every year and have a big youth outdoors day. And we actually teamed up with Carl from BZO when he was running it and brought his entire trailer full of, I think he had anywhere between 15 and 20 kayaks. And we had kids and their families out on Lake Curtis paddling around, fishing, just having a great time. So
that's cool. Being
able to do that kind of stuff and stay involved in the community, get our name out there, but also, get the youth involved is huge. And it's the future of our sport. We try to run, we tried to do some youth events over the years, like a youth tournament we did one year. Didn't get a ton of participation, but I think with time that'll get better. Especially the size of our club now, it's something I definitely want to keep trying to tap into and making a youth tournament day, whether that's, youth on kayaks or youth just on the banks, just having a fun day, a little cookout, having kids getting out fishing.
That's great. What a great idea.
So definitely something I'd like to try to do this year, if not next year.
I know I said before, speaking of youth, I know your son is a heck of a stick too. And I enjoyed watching, he put a couple videos out and,
he was able to actually get on Chad's channel there one year.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
I mean, I was watching it all. I'm like, man, this kid he's a good stick. I mean, he's good.
I'll tell you what.
He was natural in front of the camera too. Like, he was just a natural. Like you put the camera on him, and he's not only a good fisherman, but I enjoyed watching and listening to him. Like it was. I don't know how old he was at the time, but
man, that would have been 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he probably would have been about 11 at that time, 10, 11 years old.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, a lot has changed since then.
Oh, it happens. That happens.
He's 13 now, going on 14.
That's right.
But, he's a different kid, man. Not in a bad way, obviously.
No,
he's an amazing kid. Super proud of him.
Yeah.
But and he still loves to fish. He pond hops around our neighborhood. We got a couple little ponds around here, a little lake that he likes to go to. His heart's been with martial arts lately, so I'm super proud of him.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I was really glad to get him into it at a young age because it's something, it's a fishing partner for life,
Right.
That's what it's all about.
And like what you said about introducing kids, I think it's so important to do that, and they may or may not take to it. And
right.
My son didn't really take to it, and that's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but there's going to be kids that do take to it, and it is our responsibility to be that mentor and introduce them to that, expose them to that. And for the ones that it does stick and catch, then like you say, I mean, I love fishing today because my dad, took me fishing when I was young. So,
and even if you take a break from it, it's something that's always going to be there, in my opinion.
That's right.
I'm already, and I think he may still do a couple tournaments this year. Who knows? I hope he does. We got his kayak rigged up and ready to go. So he ran around Lake Anna last year with the trolling motor and, caught a couple fish, didn't do as well as he wanted to, but I think, like I said, if his mind's there with it, I think he's still got it.
Well, I think for young people too, I mean, I know Thomas was talking and I know like I haven't, like we were in a canoe and, we fished growing up, but it just seeing these kids now, the opportunities they have, they seem to have many more opportunities than we had. Maybe they
Oh,
didn't,
absolutely.
but
Yeah, especially when you're talking like scholarships and stuff like that.
Right.
I was telling Riley that I was like, buddy, you could do a lot with what you got. I know you don't understand bass boats and whatnot, but you'll learn that stuff. You can if you want to go to college and get a scholarship doing fishing, like, dude, that's your ticket, man. Like that could be a really good opportunity for you, and you'll get to get out there on a bass boat for and learn that. It's fishing's fishing. I mean, yeah, there's different aspects to it when you're on a kayak, different things you got to take into account. You're a lot closer to the water and you're fishing a lot slower. I don't care if you got a 3 horsepower torpedo on the back of your kayak. You're not going that fast. You're going 5-6 miles an hour, and you're covering a lot of you're covering a little bit of water compared to the big boats, right? You're fishing all day in a couple creeks versus running and gunning all over Lake Anna. It's not going to happen,
I think it also teaches a good lesson. Growing up, I always fish ponds and stuff, and it teaches you this California/Japanese pressure style of where you're at is where you're at. Make them bite. I feel like when you grow up in like Alabama with a boat, you just think like, well, if they're not biting, I'm just going to go somewhere else. I'm just going to go somewhere. But when you do fish small ponds or you're in a kayak, it changes the way your mind is. And it helped me a lot when I started fishing bigger tournaments on the tidal Potomac or something. It's like, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to go chase a myth or something. I'm going to make these. I can figure this out here. And it's a good lesson to teach anglers. It
is. And kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier with like, how do we, stay safe on the water, right? Like we're not telling guys to go out in the middle of the, on the main river, Potomac River. You'll hit the drop of a dime. You'll see whitecaps out there, 5-foot swells sometimes. So we encourage folks to pick a creek and fish it, pick that tributary and fish it. If you want to go somewhere else midday, most of our tournaments are about 8 hours long. So you don't have a ton of time. You want to put, as much effort as you can into a spot, pick it apart. But you have that ability to pick up and go if you really want to. But recommend staying in a creek or something, and especially when it comes to the tidal Potomac.
So, question I have too, Mike, is when you're going out, how many rods are you taking, and then what kind of between spinning and bait caster? Like what's your thought process and limited gear? You're not taking as much as you would on a bass.
Right. Yeah, that's a great
10 rods and
Yeah.
A great pound of gear. So what goes through your mindset in as far as what specifically are you throwing predominantly bait caster, spinning rod, and what kind of gear are you using?
So you'll see a lot when it comes to what everybody kind of fishes different now with what they bring. I'll tell you, there was a time where I was taking everything but the kitchen sink. Like I was loading that kayak down myself, 200 plus pounds, plus another 150 pounds of gear, batteries, motor, you name it. And this sucker, I was fishing out of a Pro Angler 360, and I don't actually fish our tournaments. I just go out and have a good time nowadays. But I was loading that kayak down, man. I had almost, I think at one point, and this isn't even that many compared to some guys are out there with 10, 12 rods. You have a lot of guys will use like a milk crate, or a lot of manufacturers now make specialized crates for their kayaks. Hobie makes one, Wilderness Systems makes one. Yak Attack has the black pack, which is a big, real popular one. You can mount at least, if you have the tank well size for it, you could put about 10 rod holders on that crate. And then let alone the flush mount rod holders that will tap into your kayak, you can put anywhere between like 2 to 6 of those things. Now, again, a lot of equipment, right? If you're fishing a big lake, that's not really a big deal. But if you're fishing a river, you kind of want to downsize, and go a little lightweight. Myself, I sort of went. I tried to scale back a little bit. I ended up selling the Hobie, and I went with the Wilderness Systems because it's actually a little easier for me to load it on my roof. I wouldn't even try to put that Hobie on the roof of my truck. I run a trailer, but we just picked up a camper last year. And to go out with the family, I still wanted to bring my kayak, and there was no way I was loading a PA-14 up on top of my truck. So I got this Wilderness System. I threw a torpedo on the back, which weighs like 12 pounds. So it's pretty nice. But again, you find that over time, you figure out what works for you. And I bring typically anywhere between 4 to 6 rods with me. So again, when you're not running that many rods, you really got to pick what's going to work for you that day, You got to be kind of selective in what you're bringing. So typically I'll run at least I don't usually take more than 2 spinning rods. I'll take one little bit heavier action spinning rod for like my shaky heads, things like that. And I'll bring a lightweight rod if I want to throw a drop shot or something. But then I'm running at least 4 or 5 bait casters at any given time, and then those I'll run specific braid weights, whatnot. Mm-hmm. For the longest time, and actually even now, I'm not a big swim bait guy, but I do. It's something I want to kind of get into a little more. I want to start bringing a swim bait rod with me, but that's sort of its own thing. That's a pretty big rod. So for a little while, I was running some smaller swim baits, kind of like your little, anything less than like an ounce and a half. I'd be able to throw in a big heavy flipping stick. So I would double down with that flipping stick, and I would run that. That would be serve 2 to 3 purposes. A lot of times on the kayak, I'd run probably anywhere between 50 and 65 pound braid, no leader, and I would just run that from all my flipping gear. If I really wanted to, I would take that off and I would run top water in the thick grass in the Potomac, because a lot of times you hook into a snakehead, so I want something tough on there. And then also I'd use that for some lighter swim baits too. So big fan of using a Sharpie on that braid. But yeah, man, like I said, you got to be selective and kind of know what you're going after before you go out. Mm-hmm. You don't have the option, the luxury of laying out 20 rods on your deck.
Mike, that has been awesome, and I know we're approaching here a little bit over an hour, so I know you probably got things to do. And
dude, this is awesome, man. It's great to finally sit down and relax. I'm tired of shoveling snow, man. It's been nuts.
How many inches do you end up getting?
Oh, well, they said we were supposed to get like 6 to 8, and I think we got about 14 inches, something like that.
Damn.
Yeah, it was
for
rough.
You.
Spring can't come fast enough. That's all.
Yeah, and it's like a really thick, heavy snow. So like so many trees and power lines were down. Yeah, thank God we didn't lose power here, but a lot of my neighboring neighborhoods had lost power, nearby neighborhoods and stuff. Most of the stores on Garrisonville Road were shut down. It was crazy.
Mike, are you all still taking on membership for your club?
So we are about to open up membership for 2022. Okay. We haven't done that yet. We're still working out some kinks with Fishing Chaos. We got to get with them, and that was another thing that we ended up getting our 501c7 status this past year.
Congrats!
So now thank you. We're an official social club recognized by the IRS, running a nonprofit status. So that opens up a lot of other doors and opportunities for us as well when it comes to community events, things like that, sponsorships and whatnot. So we're definitely looking forward to leveraging that. But yeah, with that, we have to change over like bank account information and stuff. We got a new club bank account now, so I got to do all that stuff before I can open up memberships. But yeah, they're coming. Memberships are coming. The schedule's out. We still got to make a couple fine tuning to the schedule, but
so where can people find you?
So we are on social media. We're on Facebook. We got an Instagram. We don't do the Twitter thing, but NVKBA, Northern Virginia Kayak Bass Anglers. We got a business page on Facebook, and we have a club, a group. You don't need to do anything to be in the group. You just click join, answer a couple questions, and come have fun with us. And YouTube, we have a YouTube channel, NVKBA. Is on there as well. You'll find some of our old captains meetings and stuff like that. Not a whole lot of content right now, but definitely something we want to kind of get a little more into over the next year.
And to everyone that's listening and not watching this on YouTube, all that stuff will be linked in the episode description, and you guys can listen to that again at Apple, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to your podcast. But we'll link it to Mike's information along with their website, Facebook, YouTube, the whole shebang. So you can find them.
NVKBA.com. They got a lot. We need to do a little bit of updating to the website. It still has some stuff on from last year. We want to get our new our AOY from last year up there, our championship classic winner, all that stuff. We need to get updated. So
I thought it looked good though, Mike.
Yeah, I was creeping on your website, dude. This thing is fantastic. It's well done.
Thank God for GoDaddy. Because I am not a good website guy, I'll be honest. But I do dabble. I kind of like. I'm good at figuring out what looks right, and hopefully, everybody else likes it. That's what it's all about.
Good deal. Well, Mike, thanks again, and then hopefully we can have you on as we get closer to the season and things start looking like spring again.
Absolutely, man. as everybody probably knows, it's just a lot to talk about, you know, and we're here to help as much as possible. We're here to spread the word and get folks into it and have a good time, you know.
Absolutely.
Definitely appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, it was great talking to you, Mike. Thanks for the information.
Yes, sir.
Sweet. So that was an awesome interview. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was good.
And I can't wait to have him back on again because that was really cool. And again, guys, that'll be all in the episode description. Please like and subscribe to us on YouTube. Go to Jake's Bait and Tackle. Jenny is doing a fantastic newsletter. All the information will be there as well. Liking the YouTube page actually promotes the algorithm so more people find us. So that's important. Like Jake's Bait and Tackle's Facebook page too. That helps the algorithm. Everything is about the algorithm and appeasing those gods. But besides that, I think we're good to go.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.